It was Sam's first view of a battle of men against men, and he did not like it much. He was glad that he could not see the dead face. He wondered what the man's name was and where he came from, and if he was really evil of heart, or what lies or threats had led him on the long march from his home, and if he would not really rather have stayed there in peace. Hey everyone, Yoiston here with a video on the Corsairs of Umbar and the Haradrim. We are first going to discuss the history of the Corsairs, and then the history of the Haradrim to see where the two groups of people converge into one faction, and then we'll go from there. The original Corsairs of Umbar were the descendants of Black Númenóreans from the Second Age. During the time of Númenor, the Númenóreans founded a seaport in Middle-Earth named Umbar, to the south of what would one day be known as Gondor. After the downfall of Númenor, the king's men who had served Ar-Pharazôn during his rebellion against the Valar took to raiding the Gondorian coastline from the city of Umbar. For centuries into the Third Age, the people of Umbar were a constant threat and annoyance to Gondor and its coasts. However, in the year 1015 of the Third Age, Gondor captured Umbar and had to defend it for the next 35 years against the Black Númenóreans and their allies, until 1050, when King Hiram-Endekil I conquered his enemies with land forces. Umbar would soon return to Corsair hands, however, as after the kinstrife in Gondor, where Castamir the Usurper and Eldacar conflicted for the throne of Gondor, Castamir's descendants would become the new Corsairs of Umbar. Thus, the people of Umbar had been and would retain the blood of the men of the West. That happened in the year 1447 of the Third Age. If you'd like to know more about Gondor's history up to this point, I'll leave a video to that in the description below. Anyways, these descendants were bitter enemies of Gondor, and they had stolen most of Gondor's navy on their way to Umbar. These conflicts would last for a few hundred more years, until King Tel'umetar conquered Umbar once again in 1810, defeating Castamir's descendants. This time, the Haradrim from the east would capture Umbar and mix their blood together, creating a new generation of Corsairs with both Western and Eastern blood in them. I'll come back to this point after we talk about the history of the Haradrim. These people would be known as the Haradrim, or Southrons in Westron tongue, or Swerdings by the Hobbits. There is likely a relation between this group of people and the Swarthy men who had become the Easterlings. Also, I do think it is interesting that the Hobbits knew of the Haradrim and their Oliphants. It is possible that the Hobbits were in the group of men that stayed in the south, but slowly migrated north after some time. Hobbits could be related to the Haradrim. I'll look more into that. Anyways, the Haradrim traded with the men of Númenor after they had built Umbar. However, this time of peace would come to an end after the reign of Tar-Kiryatan in 2035 of the Second Age. The Númenóreans had demanded wealth and tribute from the Haradrim, so relationships became tense. Years later, under the king Ar-Pharazôn of Númenor, the Haradrim were enslaved and sacrificed to Melkor, because Sauron had dominated the mind of Númenor's king. After the downfall of Númenor, Sauron returned to Mordor and oppressed the Haradrim and Easterlings, who began to see him as a god and as a king. The Black Númenóreans and Kingsmen who had survived the downfall also dictated the Haradrim. Thus the Haradrim became the greatest enemy of Gondor during the Second Age, before Sauron made his reappearance known to the Free Peoples. Haromor and Fuinor, two Númenórean lords, came into power amongst the Haradrim as well, according to the Silmarillion chapter entitled Of the Rings of Power and the Third Age. This is important, as it shows that the Black Númenóreans and the Kingsmen still had power within the Haradrim, even going into the Third Age. I would like to take a moment and say that Tolkien doesn't write any of the Free Peoples as innately evil, but after many years of hardship and oppression, the Haradrim found evil in their hearts. And this is really sad if you ask me. Anyways, moving on now to the Third Age. After the War of the Last Alliance, the Haradrim didn't trouble Gondor for many centuries, and there were actually dealings made between the men of the West and those of the South, but friendship itself never spurred. After Gondor besieged and captured Umbar in 1015, The Black Númenóreans and the Haradrim marched against Gondor and Umbar, and they were defeated. The Haradrim and the Corsairs became close allies as they rebelled against Gondor, even killing King Aldemir. However, they lost that same conflict to his son Ninjarion. See, with Gondor and Harad, it's a constant influx of defeats and victories between the two groups that really don't lead anywhere. It depicts how needless wars between people are. After 1810, the Haradrim and Corsairs mixed blood. Thus, the history of the Corsairs and the Haradrim become one at this point, as they are now joined by blood. As I mentioned in my Easterling video, the Haradrim eventually allied themselves with the Wainriders of the East against Gondor as well, and they almost destroyed the kingdom, but in the end they lost the campaign in the Battle of the Camp in 1944 of the Third Age. After this, the Haradrim would really only threaten this area, but they would do nothing more. This defeated the men of the South for nearly a millennium, as Gondor stood too strong for any foe to defy. Harad met this realization again in 2885 at the crossings of Paros, where they were defeated by both Gondor and Rohan under Turin the Steward and Folkwyne the King, who also fulfilled the Oath of Eorl to help Gondor in time of need during this battle. The Haradrim did not even choose to fight in this battle, as Sauron's emissaries convinced them to do so. The last time before the War of the Ring that the South would ever attack Gondor was sometime in the years 2957 to 2980, when Aragorn, son of Arathorn, who went under the guise of Thorongil, would burn the fleet of Umbar and defeat the captain. I know, Aragorn is awesome, and this just proves it even more. I think I'll discuss Thorongil's adventures in another video because they're really incredible. After this, the Corsairs and Haradrim fell under the direct command of Sauron during the War of the Ring. Before the Battle of Pelennor Fields, Sam Gamgee saw a moving force of Mumakil and Haradrim in Ithilien, before Faramir's forces attacked them. The Mumakil were Oliphants, or great elephant beasts, from Harad, that were used as war beasts to haul massive siege weapons. Sam was delighted to see the creatures and knew of their existence through poems and songs, but he was unhappy about men fighting men. This conflict also runs a lot deeper, as one of the Haradrim eventually poisons Faramir with an arrow. Later, in the south, Aragorn, the Grey Company, and the Oathbreakers would lay waste to the Corsairs who had captured Pelargir, a seaport city of Gondor. This is a really nice tie to Aragorn's time as Thorongil, as many of these Corsairs would have surely heard about Thorongil, and now would have seen Aragorn for themselves. This is the last time that we see the Corsairs of Umbar. As for the Haradrim, who had gone to the Battle of Pelennor Fields with mummics and many companies of warriors, King Theoden of Rohan slew the Black Serpent who led the Haradrim, and this event would shatter their armies through the end of the war. Once the War of the Ring was over and King Elisar came to the throne of Gondor, the Haradrim in the south sent ambassadors to Gondor and they submitted to the new king. And so ends the history of these folk who fought their fellow kin with evil in their hearts. Though they bore different appearances and rougher languages than the men of the West, all of them had indeed awoken in Hildorian at the start of the First Age together, and they were related all the same. These are the stories that we must remember today. Though differences in times of strife feel and seem important, it's truly important that we remember that we are actually one people. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this detailed history about the men of the South. If you did, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who you think might enjoy it. New polls on Facebook and Twitter are up for the coming videos, so please vote for what you would like to see next through the links in the description below. I can't wait to make those videos, they all sound really fun. Let me know your thoughts on these peoples of Tolkien's works down below, and subscribe to join the Men of the West and the Free Peoples today. Thank you all for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my friends.